Hello.
Hello.
Welcome to Hugo Girl, the podcast where we read all the Hugo Award-winning novels from a feminist perspective. My name is Haley.
I'm Lori. I'm Amy.
Woohoo! Welcome to The Stone Sky. We have read for 3 months in a row the Hugo blockbuster trilogy from N.K. Jemisin. This month's was The Stone Sky, the conclusion to the Broken Earth trilogy. So if you haven't read the other two books, you might be a little confused, but maybe
like
you
that
won't.
poor man on Goodreads who started with it too.
Yeah. I mean, to be fair, I read this entire book and then read the Wikipedia summary and was like, huh. So,
Oh, that happened.
oh, okay, cool. Well, all right. Do you want to go into like some housekeeping?
Yeah. So we wanted to thank the Hugo Book Club, who's our nice friend on Twitter, because they gave us a super nice shout out on a blog. The author is Cora Buellert. I'm sorry if I'm saying her name incorrectly. I feel like everyone else will know how to say it, but I don't know how to say it. But it's Buhlert, and she had a article posted on her website about Hugo recommendations and new things to consider. And the Hugo Book Club said, in terms of Fancast, Hugo Girl is a relatively new podcast that's doing excellent work examining Hugo-winning novels from a feminist perspective. The hosts are funny, quippy, and they do their homework. It's a very good listen. That's so nice. So thanks a lot.
Okay, but now
So
I have
nice.
to be funny and quippy.
We are. We're
The
so
pressure
quippy.
is on.
Okay. There's going to be very little quippy in this very long synopsis, and I apologize in advance.
Man, there's no way to do these synopses short. I feel vindicated from my first episode.
N.K. Jemisin wrote The Stone Sky. It won both the Hugo and the Nebula in 2018. And for people that don't necessarily know, this book is the third in a row to win from N.K. Jemisin, which is unprecedented, really, and truly deserved, I think. So at the end of the last book, Essen went a little wild and destroyed all of the Renani invaders, but in doing so, also destroyed the underground geode they were living in, Castrima Under. So now they're up on the surface. They are refugees looking for a new home, which eventually is going to be Renani, but they have to get there, and you're going to have 300 pages of walking across a desert, so look forward to that. Nassin, her daughter, on the other hand, is down in the Antarctic areas with Shafa, and they're leaving Jeketi to get to the other side of the stillness so she can go catch the moon in time for perigee. At this point, y'all, Nassin has gone full Dark Jedi. She hates everything. She wants to watch the world burn. So that's her plan. And as we talked about last time, we're setting up for this big showdown between Nassin and her mom. They get there via vehimals, and I want y'all to react to this. I found a picture of what they look like. So into the chat, I want you to click it. This is a vehimal. So vehimals are kind of like sentient monorails. I think this is from. It's not a Pokemon, is it, Lori?
No, it's from
It's from Miyazaki.
Like a Totoro type thing or something.
Yeah, we'll put a picture of this in the show notes. It is a cat school bus, but it could also be. But vehimal, and vehimal is the most clever word I've ever heard. It's perfect. I love it so much. So they're going to take that. Shafa's dying. That's not good. And at this point, if you're like me and you've imagined Shafa to be Mads Mikkelsen, he's not looking great. So you have these two viewpoints, mother-daughter. They're both on the struggle bus. They are trying to get to basically the climax of the novel. But there's another section of the book, which I found incredibly complicated to read. And actually read it twice today, and it made more sense. And it's packed full of stuff. And it takes place 40,000 years prior to the events of the novel. And it kind of shows the origin of stone eaters, why the moon went away, a horrible, awful society, etc. So Hoa was... It's so hard to explain this, y'all. So basically, this old society 40,000 years ago, I feel like I'm on mescaline right now. All right.
That's cool. This is so funny. I don't want to interrupt your plot summary, but
Yeah.
I really don't like the word vehimal, and so I had written that I would prefer it be called something like a hippopotabus. So I love the cat bus.
The cat bus. All right. So
Hippopotabus.
the origin story of life before the seasons. Back when they had the moon, it was a city called Sil Anagist. The Still-Anagists were, a very advanced society. They were trying basically to make a perpetual motion machine to get access to infinite energy, what they called geoarcanity. They're making this happen by building something called a plutonic engine, and they have people that are basically metaphysically run it, power it, kind of like how Origins can harness the obelisks. These tuners are going to basically run this fancy magic engine. However, the night before they go into space, which gets very spacey, like in a very 2001 Space Odyssey, they actually go to the moon, etc. The tuners discover the fate of the people. Okay, so this is where it gets confusing. So,
Can I help you?
yes, please do, because it's so confusing, and it's not in order. So, yeah.
Yeah, so the tuners are basically taking on a tour of the base of the Amethyst, which is the big obelisk in Still-Anagist that is powering the city to a large degree. And so they go up to it and they see it's called the Briar Patch, and it's like a network of like wires or vines or not super sure, but it is filled with basically like people in the same position as node maintainers. So they're like the discarded bodies of people who can power it that are just plugged into it, and they're basically dead but being kept alive by being hooked into this network. So they're being used as human batteries. And this is shown to the tuners like, here it is, da-da-da. And the tuners, of course, are all horrified because they're like, oh, first of all, some of our friends have gone there. And second of all, that's going to be us when we've achieved geoarcanity and they don't need us anymore. So it's sort of the seeing that is kind of the touchstone for their rebellion on the moon.
Yeah. And then if you take it back a couple of steps, the Still-Anagists had basically conquered another society called the Neas. And then I get confused. And so then they make the tuners look like the Neas.
I think they genetically engineered them so that they would have some of the orogenic powers that the Neas had.
Yeah, but it's confusing, but it gets into like a really in-depth, really searing commentary on race and colonialism and that kind of thing. It's super fascinating. Hard to work into a plot, though. Okay, so after Hoa has seen what a horrible society Still-Anagist is, he's like, I'm not going to help these guys get infinite energy. And so he decides to sabotage the operation with the engine. But before he can do that, Father Earth, who was an actual grumpy old man, intervenes to try and destroy the whole planet, because he's like NASA, and he's like, fuck it. But Hoa's like, I don't want to go that far. So they're fighting, in their minds or whatever, or rocks, I don't know. And Hoa manages to prevent it, but in doing so pushes the moon out of orbit, but Earth doesn't get completely destroyed. He turns into a Stone Eater.
Well, Father Earth turns them all into Stone Eaters, I think.
Was it Father Earth? I thought it was just the consequence of doing magic.
Father Earth does it. He's like, fine, if you're not with me, you are me. And he turns Hoa and the other tuners into stone-ish people as a punishment.
And I still have 1,000 questions about Stone Eaters, but I'll get to those later. All right, so it takes 400 pages to get to the climax of the book, but Nastin and Essen are finally in the same place. It's kind of sad. She's grown. There's remarkably not a lot of emotion on Nastin's part, because she's caring at this point more for Shafa, who's dying, her surrogate father figure. Essen is just excited to see her daughter. She's pregnant again with Lerna's child. How she got to Core Point, and Core Point is like the former capital, I think, of Still-Anagist.
It's where the Onyx obelisk kind of was going to come out and live, and that's like the key to the gate.
And there's like an opening in the earth, and below it is Warrant, where the Guardians are made.
Yeah.
And stored.
So Nastin had taken the vehimal. Essen takes what I call the Stone Eater shortcut and just goes through the earth. Nastin wants to harness the obelisk gate to turn everyone into Stone Eaters and hopefully save Shafa. And Essen wants to save the world, get things right. But, so they're fighting with their minds, and there's obelisks jiggling and all kinds of stuff happening. Essen capitulates and finally just says, you know what? I just want my daughter to be okay. She ends up dying, or not dying, but, will eventually become a Stone Eater. And Nastin is moved by this and then decides to take up her mother's mission and fixes everything. The moon comes back and seasons are ended. And then at the end, Essen is becoming a Stone Eater. And she's hanging out with Hoa as a Stone Eater. And finally, we figured out why there's a second point perspective in this because stone eaters kind of forget their lives a little bit. And so Hoa is telling the story of her life to Essen as she wakes up as a stone.
Who guessed it?
You
This
did.
guy.
You guessed
Yay.
it.
So that's it in a nutshell. I tried my best. I think I understand.
It's hard. There's so much going on.
I understand 75% of this book, and I like it, but whew.
75, that's a C. That's a passing grade.
True. I will pass this podcast. So let's get into goodies from Goodreads. Like the other two novels in this series, they were overwhelmingly positive. This book won, 3 Hugos for a reason. My favorite 2. We'll start with one little tiny one, and then that'll be the Amuse Bouche, and then we'll get into a longer one that's fun. Nick Emery says, "The Broken Earth is a hateful trilogy of hating." Then AR says,
Oh, I have AR.
Yeah, this book is hate. It aims to propagate hate. It is hard to even.
Oh God!
Yeah, it is hard to even call it a book since it's an offense to the books to put. Wait, what? Okay, this guy's not a good writer. It is hard to even call it a book since it's an offense to the books to put this lunatic scribing along with the real things. Most of the toilet wall graffiti makes more sense, are more edifying, and more fun to read than this thing. I don't recommend it for anyone, except for a brain-dead patients. Even then, proceed with caution.
Good Lord.
Yeah.
You really put a lot of thought into that.
He really did. And then, even for the brain-dead people, he's like, you still got to be careful.
It reminds me of the very common discourse, if I use that word very generously, where white people say acknowledging race and pointing out racism itself is racist. When they're like, this is a book about hating to promote hate.
Yeah.
That's like the opposite of what it's about. It's about the harm of hate and how do we unmake that system. And then no matter how we try to unmake it, it's gonna be tough times.
It's okay because those people don't see race.
Well, I have a really good one on the topic of race.
Not the only. So a lot of the reviews are good, and like they really there was one really long one that I liked because he pointed out a lot of flaws, but like really analyzed the plot really well. But I don't want to get into that. But from the website speculativechic.com, my favorite review of this that had a negative spin on it, and you gotta take the good with the bad, is the biggest flaw is I felt like the characters each took turns marking time waiting for the plot to come back around to them. And I think that is probably the worst analysis I could give of this book. Like there's one whole section where Shafa is just being fed broth every day for like 3 weeks. Yeah. But other than that, it's kind of nice to have tiny little nadirs of not sadness and bleakness, which this book is full of, in a sense that it kind of reminds me of the third Hunger Games book. It's just like, whew, things are rough. This is definitely an apocalypse situation. Alrighty.
Wait, I have a review.
Yeah, tell me your Goodreads, friends.
I have one from Amazon, which made me so mad, you guys. This is by L. McConnell, and I looked this person up, and I feel pretty confident it's a man because I looked up his other reviews. It says, if you want to read books that sideline men and is all about women and children, then these are the books for you. The world is not shared with men. They are only there to threaten or to breed children. And origins are, parentheses SIC, are discriminated against rather severely. Can you tell the book was written by a black woman? Duh. It is interesting that of 3 children in a family, one is killed by the father and one by the mother. But that's the most original thing I can say about the books.
Table flip emoji.
It was so bad.
People are so fragile. I just get so pissed when I read these reviews because it's like, how many books by a white man do you read? And you can tell it's a book by a white man. Like what do you... So you're just mad because you don't see yourself reflected in the book? Shut up.
The title of that review is All Women Plus Children All the Time.
Oh, no.
It's like when the Titanic sunk, women and children first. Ugh.
God bless. I mean, I hope LM finds something to make himself happy.
I can't even organize my thoughts about it. It just that made my stomach hurt.
I know. It's so bad. It's so bad.
Well, what's so funny is that they can just not read those books. Like I don't like
Did
mystery.
he read all three? Did he read all three and then decide he was
like,
gonna?
I mean, like I don't like mystery books, but I don't read them out of hate and then go leave bad reviews.
And
I
then
just
go
don't
be
read them.
mad that you read it.
Yeah, it's
Right. I mean, and then like this is a long trilogy. So did he read all three of them, or was he just like, this black woman's getting too much praise? I'm gonna go knock her down a few pegs on an Amazon review. Well, you sure showed her.
Yep. It was fun to sort by 1-star reviews because, like, of course, they're going to be like a couple. So, all right, where should we go next, guys?
Would you like to start with vehimal?
Yeah,
I hate it.
Okay, so let's unpack why Lori hates vehimal.
It feels so biological to me, and I don't have like a good way to articulate it because I was thinking about how much I do generally like a bioship, like Third Fish and New Fish and Binti. I love that they're flying around in space in a fish. I don't know, like the word vehimal, I'm just imagining they're like in a giant steak, and it grosses me out.
See, I didn't think that because they don't describe it as meaty.
I don't know. I just imagined it as meaty. I imagined that I was on
lost
MARTA on the way to work, like Peachtree Center underground, surrounded by meats. And
I invited it as like sort of pleasantly fungal.
Yeah, mine was definitely more vegetal. It's interesting that the vegetarian was thinking of meat and the meat eaters weren't.
So it made me think of the Yeats poem, The Second Coming, and everybody likes the first stanza the most about the sinner cannot hold, things fall apart. That's the one that people always want to quote, but I really have always liked the second stanza, and part of that says, what rough beast, its hour come round at last, slouches toward Bethlehem. And when I was reading about this vehimal, I was thinking to myself, what rough beast, its hour come round at last, slouches toward Core Point. Or if you want to make it friendly, you can call it a hippopotabus.
I was kind of picturing like a hollowed out mushroom with some like fake windows on it.
Mine was
like that was where I was in my mind.
Mine was a MARTA train car covered in grass.
But it's vehimal.
I can't explain
it's vehicle animal.
Well, I mean, mushrooms are neither plant nor animal, you know?
Well, yeah, they're fungus. It's not vehimus or vehishroom.
But she didn't describe it in any sense that made it seem like it was made of meat.
Well, I don't remember. So that's my position, and I'm sticking to it.
Yeah, I mean, when I think of a vehimal, I think of Battlestar Galactica when Starbuck has to get in there, and like the Cylon Raiders are actually there's like meat in them. So
I forgot about that.
Yeah,
I just wish that it was a different word. And then, like a lot of times in the Hoa chapters from back in Silanogist, they call it a vehimal there too. But there are other words that are different in Silanogist versus modern narrative, and so I was like, really, we have to say it like that because they call the obelisks like fragments.
Yeah.
But no, vehimal, I can't escape that word. That word lasts for 40,000 years.
Vehimal is definitely like a children's TV show word.
Yeah.
It just seemed a little bit out of place. I liked it. It was cute.
Yes.
I
agree with out of place.
Yeah, it seemed a little too cutesy for this very bleak landscape.
I was jarred and I shook my head every time I came across the word vehimal, which was frequent.
It definitely jarred me too, because like they're just in this vehimal.
For so long.
Long. Well, I mean, it's probably like a 3-month MARTA train ride. That's too long. So, okay, my overarching question, I think. I mean, I have thousands, but my overarching one is: why can I believe so many things about this world? People can start earthquakes. Magic exists. The moon moved out for 40,000 years, but I cannot fathom a world in which the Earth is sentient, much less a grumpy old man. That's like the one point that I cannot suspend my disbelief over.
I don't know why you can't, but I have one of those too, where I felt that when they got in the big grasshopper vehicle and just hopped to the moon, I was like, this has jumped the shark.
The thing
I
just
will finish
jumped
it
to the
I have
moon.
to.
It just jumped up there.
I know. I imagined, what's his name? Danny Zuko. I imagined him on his little water skis.
Hello, it's me, Lori, from the future. I realize I should have said the Fonz and not Danny Zuko. I am very sorry to any Henry Winklers who may have been harmed by my error.
jumping to the moon. I was like, this is a bridge too far. And I want to say, like, I do still like the book, despite my complaints about vehimal. And this is the same complaint because it's still a vehimal. But I was just like, guys. And the funny thing is, they were like packing up to go to the moon. And I turned to Kevin and I said, they're going to go to the moon? And he looked at me and he was like, no. And I was like, what are you talking about? And I read the paragraph out loud and he goes, oh, well, yeah, they're going to the moon. I thought you meant Essen.
Why would you think that?
I don't know. I don't know. I was referring to the wrong group of people who went to the moon. And
I don't remember. I mean, I remember seeing the word grasshopper, but I thought it was a metaphor. And I
think it was grasshopper-ish.
Yeah, I mean, I just imagine a really quick plane ride. You know,
I pictured that as a different kind of vehimal. Like they were like, because they like everything was living basically where they were because they used living beings to like power their geoarcanity. So I actually thought it was something very akin to a real grasshopper.
I think it probably was. I think it was a different kind. Like you have your subway vehimal and your flying vehimal and probably like boat vehimals. Do you have a boat or do you have a dolphin vehimal? I don't know. But yeah, I think it definitely was a different kind. Amy, I'm glad that you said that about the life thing because that's a big theme about how Solanogist, life is sacred in Solanogist, but it doesn't mean what you would think it means on the surface. Kind of like how people who are pro-life, it doesn't really mean what it sounds like you would hope that it means. Life is sacred because they use life for everything. They use living ships to go to the moon. They use living subway cars. They use living people to power their lights and their water pumps and things like that. So life more like means it's commodified.
Yeah. I am having a hard time not wanting to just stop and come up with different names like Hippopotabus.
I spent some time and Hippopotabus was by far the best one I could think of.
Yeah.
The other one was Subway Snake, which is not as good.
Subway Snake. I do not want to get that 5 for 5. Oof.
Wonder Worm.
Scarecrow boat.
Tunnel Tiger.
All right, we have to pause, otherwise we'll never. But we should table this and just have an entire episode coming up with names for hippopotamus analogs.
I only like hippopotabuses.
All right, another question. Someone tell me about guardians. How do they live to be 40,000 years old?
The core stone.
But what does that do?
It's magic. If you don't understand it, you just say it's magic.
Ah, yeah, okay.
So the core stones keep them alive and give them their powers.
Yeah. They're being fed magic from the earth.
I have a follow-up question about guardians if I can.
Oh, yeah, please.
Is that okay?
Yeah.
Okay, so I understand how guardians are made, but Father Earth made the original guardians by just exploding some of his metal into some people and then I guess exerted that control to get those people to continue installing metal in other people for generations?
I'm not real clear on that either. I couldn't tell if Father Earth was controlling the entire Warrant and Guardian situation all the time, or if people learned to do it and took it over at some point.
Because the Guardians kill other Guardians if they become what they call contaminated by Father Earth. So I wonder if they're like trying to harness the power of the core stone without the control that would give Father Earth.
But how do they get the core stone unless they're recycling
metal,
core stones?
Well, I think any metal is gonna.
I didn't. I think it's the metal out of those. It's those shards that come out of the obelisk holes, right?
Yeah, I think so. But also, Hoa at some point when he's narrating is like, "Yeah, you can't trust metal because Father Earth is in the metal."
Oh,
like stone and dirt and water are safe, but metal isn't.
I think what would make this book a lot clearer would be more of a discussion about Father Earth, because it's very. Because for most of the series, I thought it was kind of like, like a legend or something. But then, like, no, he's an actual character. But, like, how? I mean, because I don't quite understand what stonecutters do. And also, do they reproduce? Because there's only 6 originally, right?
Yes, they do. Hoa mentions that, albeit very briefly. He says some of them made others, and they like didn't do a great job making them, or they made them hastily, and those are he describes them as the hungry ones.
Yeah, so when they get to core point, Nassin is, taking care of a very sick Shafa. And there's a period of maybe a week in the couple of pages in one section where everywhere she looks, there's just a stone eater behind her. And it kind of reminded me of when I went to Mexico and there's just lizards everywhere. There's just stone, like they're just everywhere. And like one like
they're just sitting there.
one leaves her a sandwich or something. And like, so they're nice-ish because, she's going to help them with their mission. So tell me again. Okay. So what did the stone eaters want to destroy humans too?
Well, there's a rift.
Okay.
There's a rifting in the Stone Eater community.
Oh.
So some of the Stone Eaters are on Team Alabaster, where we want to remake the world. We want to catch the moon, heal the beef with Father Earth, and let people just like figure their shit out. It's going to be tough for a while, but going forward, we've ripped off the Band-Aid, we've talked it out, we've hugged it out, and going forward, things are going to improve and be more equitable too. And then the other faction is just exhausted and is like, burn it all down. I've been alive for 40,000 years. Most of it has sucked. I would like to die.
Yeah.
And so they're the ones trying to get Nassin to destroy the moon so that the Earth will just go poof and they can finally rest. I mean, honestly, like I see that point of view.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a long time to live. And also, you guys, I have a small answer about Guardians if you want to go back to it. Or
yes, please.
There's a Reddit where they mention, and I'd forgotten this, that so when at the moon site, when Hoa is fighting with Father Earth and they're doing their thing, there's a core stone there. There's a larger core stone there that explodes into smaller fragments. And it got inserted into the conductors, which were the people who were kind of running that Geo-Arcanity thing. And then Hoa says that the Earth expected this to kill them, but he underestimated the willpower of humans. So it sounds like Guardians are some sort of ongoing little fight between Earth and humans. And that when Earth wins, that's when they get contaminated.
So that's so confusing because, from book one, you're just like, Guardians take care of Origins and like make, so like it's just very different. It's confusing.
Yes, I 100% agree. It is confusing.
Yeah.
I mean, yes, I agree as well.
Those are my three most salient, outstanding questions. What do y'all have?
How did Core Point survive completely intact for 40,000 years?
Yeah, that's a good question.
That's mine.
No one was there.
I mean, Warrant is there, so it's possible they were doing some sort of upkeep. But
oh yeah, that's true.
But we don't know what they're like. We don't know anything about Guardians, so it's like,
do you know what it's like? So there's still Guardians in Warrant, right?
Well, it sounds like they're there. They're made there. They must be schooled in some way there. But then they only go back there after they leave to sleep during seasons, is what I understood. But I do not know if that is accurate.
See, it seems like, why do they hibernate? Like, I feel like if there's Origins, there needs to be Guardians nearby, right?
So I think the idea is that at the fulcrums, all the Origins are slaughtered in a season, which is,
yeah.
I don't ever quite understand that because I still feel like their powers would be very useful to people at large.
Yeah,
but
absolutely.
The plan A, is to kill everybody, and then the Guardians go hibernate. But the silly thing to me is that then you're basically, by necessity, creating feral Origins who then you're going to have to deal with after the season. And
yeah, it's not a good plan.
don't mind feral Origins. They have a right to exist and live. But in this society, the way they've structured things, it seems to undercut their own plan.
Well, and then it's just hard to find them. Like, it's like, how do they find the Slayers? Like, Guardians are like Watchers. So.
Yeah.
That's confusing. I didn't realize that.
Kind of like Watchers, and Shafa ends up kind of like Giles because Giles gets in trouble because the council says you have a father's love for Buffy, and they're not supposed
it's true.
to.
It is so nice. Like I kept waiting for Shafa to be a bad guy, but Shafa just was nice at the end. He wanted a little redemption.
He's also kind of a child abuser. So, and I don't know. Shafa's a weird one to me because it's like I think we're supposed to believe in his little redemptive arc, but I'm not sure I do.
I do.
I do. Yeah.
All right.
I mean, because there's no evidence that he's got any sort of ulterior motives. Like, is he a shitty person for the past 40,000 years? Probably. Has he killed a lot of kids? Probably. But he seems nice at the end. He's just dying. So
Yeah, I mean, I think he's earned what he gets for sure. But I'm there for his redemption arc. I mean, he chose terrible, terrible suffering in order to protect Nasson and care for her.
well, a good question is the origin story of Guardians. Like, do they probably don't choose to have metal put in their head and do these horrible things, right?
No, he talks about his memory of it is revealed, and he remembers trying to fight it, and so his core stone went in a little lopsided,
Oh,
which is why he was a little different always.
oh,
And he mentions that like the way he avoided, I can't remember exactly if he was talking about avoiding death or avoiding, I can't remember what he was avoiding, but he avoided something that befalls Guardians by actually loving his charges, which was interesting to me. But he was also loving them within the paradigm of this weird relationship that the Guardians have with the Origins, where they're supposed to kill them. It's all very odd. But I mean, I agree that he didn't ask for it.
Well, he was made a tool and abused, just like most of the people in the story. So he's not so different. I mean, I think
that's true.
At bottom, a lot of this story is that these people are not so different.
yeah.
Like Essen and Father Earth are both parents who are lashing out in a really dangerous rage because they've had children ripped away from them. For Father Earth, it's the moon. For Essen, it's literally all of her children.
That's true.
But they're not so different. And Shafa's not so different.
A lot of children, if you believe what he says. Then, but why did he kill the people at the Antarctic fulcrum?
I think it was his programming. I don't know, but I think it was his programming is to do that in a season, and they shouldn't have been there. So I assume that it's some leftover of the programming that Guardians have in a season.
Yeah, that makes sense. He's just an autopilot.
That's my guess, because he does have to really expend a lot of effort and suffering to not kill all those kids that were in jeopardy with him.
Yeah. I guess he also could have seen them as some sort of threat to Nasson. Like, if they were eventually going to carry out their orders and kill all the Origins, then that could be a threat to Nasson too.
Yeah. Yeah. All right.
Just, if you don't understand it, it's just magic.
It's magic.
The magic.
I like how at a point N.K. Jemisin too sort of, I think she's acknowledging a little bit in the book when Hoa is on the moon, and then he's like, I don't really know how I got back. And I think she was like, I may have just like carried this out a little too far, and now my characters are trapped on the moon, not sure what to do. Amnesia. It's a classic Days of Our Lives move, and I respect it. It's bold. Maybe they fell to Earth like meteors.
Yeah. Or maybe, they're all rock at that point, so why not?
But I lolled when he was just like, I don't know.
I thought N.K. Jemisin could have a little Deus Ex Machina as a treat.
I know the other thing that was bugging me in this book. So we're going to get Cockle and Oily Cock before. But now we don't even get one sex scene between Essen and Lerna. Not one.
But she doesn't like him that much. She says that it's like, oh, it's fine.
This is a great transition to boob talk.
Okay.
And yeah, that makes a good point. There was such sex the first book, but again, there was also like 50% more at least fun scenes in that book than this book. There's nothing fun about this book.
And I also never detected any sexual tension between Lerna and Essen.
No, there's no passion there. There's companionship, and I think he loves her, but it's in much more of a companionship kind of way.
And then she realizes she loved him at the end when he was gone, which is too late, Essen.
In my head, Lerna is Chidi from The Good Place. He's just like this nerdy doctor.
Yes, that's perfect.
Yeah.
I don't know. Chidi's got some passion. No? Nobody?
Yeah.
That
but
guy's
like
hot.
he can also be like nerdy and clinical and cold too.
Yeah. That's the part.
But
I mean, Chidi will dress up like the mailman for Eleanor, though. And I guess Lerna probably would have dressed up as a sexy mailman.
Yeah, in a different life, I think Lerna would have done that too.
Yeah, I mean, they are living in post-apocalypse, and Chidi's in.
Couldn't really understand why Lerna was so devoted to Essen. I mean,
can't pick who you love, man.
He knew her, in the before times when she was a teacher, and maybe she was like fun to chat with or something. I don't know, but I didn't really follow it. And also like she froze his whole city. Like there's a reason that you don't know. There's a reason you don't know literally anyone except for her.
Essen is not a to me, y'all may disagree with me, but to me, Essen is not a hugely sympathetic character. Like she doesn't, every time anything important happens, she sort of freezes and then freaks out. And it always makes me mad. And then she like kills people sort of willy-nilly and ruins the geode where everybody lives because she can't control herself. And like I don't know, Essen to me is a hard character to love.
My favorite version of her is Cyanite because she's pissed. She's and then
Cyanite just
woman
goes away.
She's like,
yeah,
she snaps at people and she's like talks about how she's angry about things.
Yeah,
and then I feel like Essen she's so hurt. So I want to be sympathetic with her because I mean, how do you? She's surviving at this point, right?
Yeah,
she's surviving in order to try to ensure her child's survival. So she's very numb. So I feel like for us, there's not much for us to connect with. But I agree with you that I'm just like, oh, everybody's sad again. You know, I very much felt the trudging along with them. But
yeah.
I was also sort of like, can we all be put out of our misery? It's okay with me if we all just die.
So she's also kind of thick. Like she doesn't get things right away. And
she was literally between a rock and a hard place with Kashima though. Because if she didn't destroy it, they were going to kill all of them. So like that one I think is not necessarily her fault.
I totally agree with you.
Which one are you talking about?
Like she had to destroy Kashima under because otherwise they would have been killed anyway. So
yeah, and when she killed all the people in the Renanis army, now I didn't know. Oh, Haley, I like how you say Renani, like it's a French town, because I call it Renanis since I'm from Congress.
Same.
But when they got there, and everybody there had been turned to stone too, and I was like, damn, she just like reached up with her orogeny and was like checking people's passports, and if you're from Renanis, you're getting turned to stone.
Yeah, that was cool.
I was surprised by that. I thought like, you just go for the army who's right there at your gate, because presumably the people who are back in the city would probably be the people who are like not able to travel and fight. So those would be people who are probably not dangerous, older people, children. So I found that upsetting. But I mean, it's fitting with what's happened previously in the book.
Yeah.
Kevin asked me yesterday, he made a comment about the city that Essen destroyed. And I was like, can you be more specific?
There was at least two.
Yeah. Well, there was more. There's Alia, there's Terimo, and there's Renanis, and there may be more.
Yeah. Yeah. Kashima under.
Oh, yeah.
God bless.
Okay, so back to boob talk. So there's no good lovin' in this book that we see on screen or, on page.
Nope.
The closest we get to an actual boob is when it's her left boob, I think, turns.
Whichever one was the less cute one.
Yeah, I think she I've heard that the boob that is closest to your dominant hand is your favorite because it gets more exercise. I don't know.
Yeah, my right boob is definitely my bigger boob.
Oh, I think I like my left boob.
Weird. I have good old righty, good old lefty. So there's a description. So this book, in addition to the dystopia you get and the mass murder, you also get some body horror. So after her arm turns to stone, there's a really graphic scene of Hoa eating that. And then he eats her stone boob, which, whew.
But I like that he just sort of reaches out and just plucks it from her body.
Yeah. She's like, why don't you gnaw it off of me like Antimony did to Alabaster? And he's just like, oh. He's like, that. Who would do such a thing? He's like very offended that Antimony would just gnaw Alabaster's fingers right off of his hand.
So fun fact, this reminded me of when I was 14, my little magnet program class of 80 kids got to, before freshman year of high school, we got to go to Orlando to Disney World, I think, or Universal Studios. And we also went to Medieval Times one night. And before the dinner, we got to go into the basement, which is where all the torture devices are.
Oh my God.
I messed me up for a couple of weeks because there's some weird shit down there.
At Medieval Times?
It may have just been the one
what now?
So in the basement in 1997, in the Orlando Medieval Times, there was a basement of like torture devices that would have been used at this time period.
Oh, whoa.
And one of which, there was your Iron Maidens, there was your stocks, but there was also this thing called a boob ripper. I swear to God, I'm not making this up. I have thought about that once a week for the past 25 years.
This was not fun for the whole family.
So that's what that reminded me of.
Oh, no.
That is shocking that they would have that at medieval times.
Yeah, I need to Google this. Maybe I made it up. Maybe it's a dream, but I remember vividly seeing these things.
Turn on safe search before you Google boob ripper, please.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, that's true. But okay.
We left out little Kalinli from, or whatever her name was, from
Kalinli.
Yes, from Solanogist, who was the nice little feminist Stone Eater prototype. I guess she wasn't a Stone Eater prototype. She was a prototype of the Tuners before they became Stone Eaters. But she was like, she's the one that like kind of busts them out and opens their eyes to what they're gonna be. And then at some point she becomes pregnant, and I've always been very curious as to how.
Oh, I assume that what is his name? Gallant or something? The head tuner, the head
You
conductor.
think it was his baby?
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, he was obviously in love with her, even though they were raised like siblings, which is uncomfortable.
Fascinating.
Because he thought she was his sister until they were a certain age.
I didn't even know she was pregnant until I read the summary afterwards. But I think my favorite example of boob talk, and this is not necessarily boob, but it's the general body ephemera. At one point, to get to the vehimal, Nassan and Shafa have to go to this thing called Old Man's Pucker.
Yep.
Old Man's Pucker. She wrote that in a book that won an
It's
award.
Mother Earth. He's a grumpy old man, and that's his pucker.
It's a crater. It's a caldera within a caldera. I had to Google that, but I couldn't stop thinking about that word for a long time. So, and that concludes my boob talk.
Yeah, my boob talk was just the rock boob.
Yeah, Amy and I had both read that last episode. We were like, so there's no boob talk in this book, but there's a major boob incident in the next book.
It makes up. Just y'all wait.
Oof.
In terms of misogynist moment, as that one nice gentleman said on Amazon, there's not a ton of men in this book. And so the only male character I hate is Father Earth. He holds a grudge.
I'm not mad at Father Earth because his child was kidnapped, and as we see in every Lifetime movie, wouldn't any good parent, usually a mother, burn down the whole world to find their child? So I'm not mad at him.
And Father Earth, they were trying to steal his life force, and then they stole his kid.
They're trying to enslave him, and they stole his baby.
Mm-hmm.
He should fuck everybody up.
Mm-hmm.
What's interesting is that in so many depictions of Earth as a concept, it's usually Mother Earth, Gaia, Pangaea's like it seems like a more feminine thing. So I was intrigued that she chose to make a masculine Earth presence.
Yeah, I like that she turned that on its head, that it's a masculine presence and it is very, very, very mad at us.
Yeah. I just can't get on board. I think he's a jerk. I don't know. Like, how much does he love the moon? Give me the evidence. I don't know.
It's his baby.
It's his baby. So yeah, not a lot of misogyny. There's just a lot of what's general hate for everyone. That's what this
like misanthropy.
Yeah. Misanthropy. There's a lot of misanthropy in this book. And I think my misanthropic moment is just this 10-year-old girl is like, I want to destroy everyone, and that's so sad. Like she's that much innocence has been ripped from her. She's had to kill her father, and she's just like, you know what? I'm done.
So in the end, when she decides not to do the thing she was setting out to do, which was destroy everybody, like, so for a while she wanted to destroy everybody, and then she was like, oh wait, Shafa could live. I don't want him to die, so I'm going to turn everybody into Stone Eaters instead. And then her mom shows up, and she's like, my mom, like when Essen dies, she dies with kind of like a look of love on her face, and she's like reaching out for Nassan, which I guess is supposed to be enough for Nassan to decide not to kill everybody. I
think Nassan feels her relent, and I think that really meant something to her because she was like, my mom knew that she was going to die, and she was on this like global quest and gave that up and gave up her own life so that I would be spared. And she just very quickly has a change of heart. And I mean, she is 10. You
It's
know,
true.
so
They're
I'm
changeable
sure that will
beings.
have a big impact on her.
Yeah.
But it actually,
Yeah.
I think that the thing that made me maddest at Essen over the course of all of these books was at the end of this one when Nassan sees her smile at her for the first time. And I was like,
Ever.
what the fuck? Like, I know that she was a hard, strict mom, but she didn't like come home with a good grade on her reading assignment, or she didn't like do a good job floating a pebble, and you weren't like, good job, smile. Because even at the fulcrum, they got positive feedback. They were in an abusive environment, but they got positive feedback when they did well.
Yeah.
So I was like, golly, that was the most upsetting thing I think that I learned about Essen.
I mean, Essen in no situation is a particularly good mother, right? Like in the traditional sense. Like she has that kid with Alabaster and largely lets Alabaster take care of it, right? She doesn't have a large maternal instinct towards this kid. Like she loves it. I don't think she doesn't love the kid. But, she's pretty hands off.
Holds him and plays with him and comforts him.
Yeah. So at that point, there was no reason for her not like to specifically withhold her love. She loved him and she showed the kid she loved him, but largely she let Alabaster do the child rearing. But then after that kid dies and after Inan dies and after Alabaster's gone and like all this stuff, I think she's like very like she's she has a reason to not be vulnerable and like connect with her children and put her love into these children because she's obviously a hurt person at that point. So it rang true to me that was something she would do, like not ever smile at the child, not ever like basically just teach the child to live because the other child died. And so like I that rang true to me. That was not the thing that made me maddest. The thing that made me maddest was that she's so dumb. But
I was mad about that, and I was mad about when Nassan was like, "Oh, Mama," and then she just turns around to go back to her moon business, and Essen has the gall to say, "You look at me," and I was just like, "You guys know I have some mom relationship issues," but I was just like, "How dare you tell her to turn around and look at you? Where have you been?"
That is not the right. She did not do any of that correctly until the very end. And she was like, you know what? I'm just going to let her win. Like she did not handle any interaction with her child ever correctly. Oh, Essen.
That's kind of actually changed my mind as we discuss this. In terms of feminist favorite, like I love that she has a depiction of a mother that is not like the nicest, sweetest thing that ever happened. Like
true. That's true.
Like there is such a cloying, like mommy thing in pop culture, especially that isn't true for a lot of people, and it really sucks for a lot of people too.
Yeah,
and
you can love your kid and not be the world's most suburban mom.
Like I learned about this, I think in high school when we read Siddhartha. Like at a certain point, and I don't remember any details from that book, but I remember the feeling of like at one point one of the characters was like, I just don't like my kids, and like maybe they love them, but like I think Nassan loves her daughter in a way that is very untraditional and wants her to survive, but like she's not full of the milk of human kindness, as it were. And I think that's okay because some moms don't feel that way too. But I mean, I am very corollary to a lot of mothers my own age, and I think some of them struggle with what it means to be a mother in society. And this society, which is a cold, dark, hard society, love can look very different. So
I like that we get different versions of Essen as a mother, because Cyanite as a mother, I was like, I'm on board with this. The child has two other parents, one who is the primary nurturer, and Cyanite will be kind and will love the child, but more wants to be in a provider role.
Yeah, like the dad.
She wants to go be a pirate with the other dad, and there is a parent who's a nurturer. So I like that we get no traditional mom roles for her. But we do get to see, I guess, what could have been. She could have been a non-traditional good parent. Non-traditional for us, non-traditional mom, and a version of a good parent had things not gone horribly, horribly sideways.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm. Hurt people. It's the theme of every story.
That's right. Such a theme of every story. Do y'all have any more feminist favorites?
I don't.
Other than Colleen Lee, I liked her.
Oh, yeah. Me too.
Yeah. I think in general, before we start discussing, my feminist favorite was just the idea of having two women be at the pinnacle of the book at the climax, both being very powerful. And like that, that's pretty rare in a book to have like one child, two characters of color, one is 10 years old, and they're fighting to save the world. I think that was hugely powerful for me.
Yeah. And both of them, there are a lot of gender paradigms that are turned on their head, like the Father Earth, Mother Earth thing. And then also we have Nassan in a lot of ways motivated by the near death of her father figure, Shafa. And then we have Essen, who's motivated by the loss of male partners, male lovers, and children, which is a traditional thing. But we don't have the man on the quest because his princess was kidnapped or killed or whatever. It's definitely the inverse of that.
There's no damsel in distress situation in this book.
For sure.
Yeah.
Nope. It's just the world in distress all the time.
Right.
Well, and one thing I like about it is even though this world is like bleak and there's all kinds of discrimination, there doesn't appear to be any sexism. It just doesn't exist.
There couldn't be in a world in which society crumbles every couple of years. Like everyone is important.
I mean, I guess I could certainly see a version of that where we have to protect the women at all costs, so that they're all breeders. Like all women are just considered breeders. We got to protect the women at all costs so that they can make more babies and keep society going. So I think that could be an option in this world, and it just isn't there.
They can't have all the time breeding all the time because there's not enough food, right? So it seems like that may be a natural sort of block to that way of thinking, maybe. But
what did she say? She's like, I thought that starvation in middle age would be good enough birth control, and she still gets pregnant. So.
But no, it is really refreshing to read this book that has a bunch of conflict in various ways, but thank God sexism isn't one of them.
Nobody gets raped, no matter how bad things get.
Oh,
you don't have to see anybody get raped. Oh, and I'll say I think my feminist favorite is the acknowledgement of menstruation, where Essen is like, oh, I haven't in a while. And then she also thinks to herself, oh, Nassan, she's grown up, and during a season, things like that accelerate, and she's going to start menstruating soon. And just the acknowledgement that it exists in people's lives is a big deal to me, because you don't see it much in fiction.
I'm glad we don't have to have a period in an apocalypse.
It's like, I feel like we go to great lengths to avoid it, even in fiction, where it would just be a natural thing to include.
Well, if you think about every Jane Austen book ever written, it was written by a woman, but a lot of 19th century novels were written by men. And if every book was written by women in the 19th century, somebody would have mentioned what they did when they had their periods, but it's not in anything, or at least not that not major reproducible works. And that's weird.
It shows up in Bridgerton.
Well, when I was watching Bridgerton, they always pull back the sheets to check and see if they started their period. And I was like, if you guys are expecting your period, do you not? I mean, I don't know, but I was like, you don't have something that you might wear or sleep on? Because the housekeeper is checking the sheets too. And I'm like, really?
It doesn't always come at night, though. That's the thing.
They're just checking. They're just checking to see if it did. I'm not sure that
sometimes you're in court, and
I mean, she got hers during the opera that one time.
Yeah. I appreciated that scene, and I appreciated that it was realistic. But they kept checking the sheets, and I was just like, okay.
I also appreciated that they dealt with that in the Queen's Gambit. It should have.
I watched it yet. Yeah.
Oh, y'all should watch it. It's good.
That just brought up another 9th grade memory. Man, 1997 is killing me right now. When I was in 9th grade, starting high school, I was very afraid of always getting my period randomly. I've never had a huge accident like that.
Oh,
but
I have. It's always random for me.
But I was deathly afraid of it. And so I kept a Gap anorak, which is a jacket that you put into a little bag. And it lived in my locker for 4 years.
Just in cases?
Just in case I could wrap it around my waist and hide. So, but yeah.
Oh, all right. I got it one time during a basketball game. That was a fun time.
Oof. No good. All right. I have one last thing for the food section. So
I have an excerpt from a really good review.
Oh,
that
yeah,
I
please do. Yeah, let's do it.
It's not a goodies from Goodread. It's a real review. Because I feel like we have had a lot of questions and we were confused by a lot of things, but also I think we all agree that there's a lot of good stuff in this book.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely. Yeah.
I think it was well summed up in this review on NPR by Amal El-Motar, who's also the co-author of This Is How You Lose the Time War.
Oh, I love that.
And it's a little bit long. She says, I am used to fantasy and science fiction in novels, in films, and comic books, setting up apocalypse as threat, cataclysmic change as something to be prevented at all cost. Villains are by and large those who want to change the world, while heroes are the ones who preserve the status quo, who keep it intact. The unquestionable premise of this kind of setup is that the world is precious and worth saving. The Stone Sky rejects this out of hand. If the Broken Earth trilogy as a whole shows a world where cataclysm and upheaval is the norm, the Stone Sky interrogates what right worlds built on oppression and genocide have to exist.
I like that.
Yeah, me too. Because when I finished reading the book, in a lot of ways, I was like, I'm kind of glad this is over. They're good books, but they are so sad. And I just feel like I've been watching people starve to death and turn to stone for many hundreds of pages, which I do think would be different if I had read them as they came out. You know, if I read one a year, but reading them all in like 90 days
was a lot. Yeah.
Kind of emotionally tiring. So when I read this review, I was glad to look at it that way, because the apocalypse is in this book. It's like, open this wound so that it can heal better.
Yeah. You got to go. You got to go through it. I mean, this book is so jam-packed with meaning that I think it should be studied in classes. You know, I mean, there's just so much to it.
I look forward to reading someone's dissertation on this trilogy.
I look forward to reading like a sophomore in college's 5-page paper on it. I would love to read it.
Give me your best 5-paragraph essay.
Yeah. Cool. This book's fantastical food fragment. So most of this book, people are starving, so there was not a lot of fodder. But there's one scene that really harkened back to a scene in The Handmaid's Tale for me, and it's when Nassin is eating sausage, and she saves the little flecks of fat to make candles later, because she's running low on candles. This hardship, survivor-style use of foodstuff, to me, for utilitarian purposes, reminds me of the butter as elbow cream in Handmaid's Tale.
Oh, yeah. That also must remind you of that show you watch where people have to live on a 18th century farm.
I found a new one, and they have to live in a castle. Oh, it's so good.
I want to watch that one. What's that one called?
It's like called Living in the Castle or something.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's like it's the same 3 people. It's a woman and 2 men that, like, you know, just do historical reenactments, and it's all on Amazon Prime, and I love it. So.
Living in a castle. That's like I wrote the title.
Definitely Googled living in a castle.
It's not called that, but what's really cool is that it takes place. There's a place in France that is. It's probably done now because this show was old, but they were spending 25 years as a project building a castle with only 12th century technology. So it's fascinating. And, you know, they have to eat medieval foods, and it's right up my alley.
Is it the medieval castle life in a fortress?
Yeah. Living in a castle, you know.
You're pretty close.
That's its Christian name. I call it Living in a Castle.
Oh, wait, no, that's a book. Hold on.
What's that when it's at home? Living in a castle.
Living in a castle. It's like Livin. All right, guys. Is this Star Wars or Lord of the Rings?
I think it's Lord of the Rings.
Defend your position.
We have a ragtag group of friends/survivors who travel to the other side of the world. So they're basically going to Mordor to destroy the ring. Essen's quest is to destroy the ring. Or wait, someone's quest is to destroy the ring. And it's hot and it's scary, and it made me think of going to Mordor. So, Lord of the Rings.
Amy, what are your thoughts?
To me, this one straddles the two because of all the things Lori just said. But also, you kind of can't get past the fact that Nassin is basically learning to use the Force, that they do, in fact, go to space, and in the end, the moon looks a little bit like the Death Star.
Oh, that little. Well, I don't want to.
It got a hole.
I don't want to concede any points, but that big core stone kind of is a little baby Death Star.
Okay, my argument is Star Wars for 4 reasons. 1, there's some serious space in this, as Amy mentioned. 2, there's a lot of sacrifice here. Shafa's redemption in Nassin, Essen sacrificing herself for Nassin. That's very indicative to me of, like, you know, Darth Vader throwing the Emperor down the pipe hole or whatever.
You don't think people sacrifice for each other in The Lord of the Rings?
I'd like to introduce you to a man named Boromir.
You know, I've never seen him.
I would like to introduce you to a man named Gandalf and the Balrog.
I don't know her or her. So,
Amy's flip-flopping now.
Magic is everywhere.
I take exception to the implication that Lord of the Rings has no self-sacrifice.
I truly will admit that I know nothing about Lord of the Rings. So, magic, the Force is everywhere and binds us, penetrates us, literally in the case of Guardians.
There's magic in Lord of the Rings too.
Yeah. Again, don't know that. Sil Anagist is obviously the Imperial empire. It's evil. They have,
concede
a
that
horrible amount of
That's
things
true.
they have for
That's true.
slaves. So
It's a very Star Warsy name,
those
too.
are my 4 points. So
I think we have 1.5 votes for Lord of the Rings and 1.5 votes for Star Wars.
You're a split vote.
I'm fine with the tie.
We split vote.
Are you voting present, Amy?
I think y'all's points should be weighted heavier than mine, since I have a woeful lack of knowledge about Lord of the Rings. So
I'll take the win. I accept.
I concede your point.
This just brings us to the point that we need to do a baby girl about one of the Lord of the Rings movies.
I'm down. I literally have no plans ever.
So the final showdown with mother and daughter, and there's like a lot going on with magic. And I was kind of wondering, what is everyone else, all the still people, what are they seeing? Are they both just like standing there sort of with their hands in the air, holding still, waving their arms around? Is there wind?
Yes, that's what I want to know.
That's what I think. That's what I
in
think.
the miniseries of this, is everybody just sort of standing there like, what do you think's happening?
I
right
picture
now?
I
And
imagine
then
we'll get-
Essen falls over and turns to stone, and they're like, "Oh, okay."
I imagine
do they have any idea how things are going?
yeah, like Essen's eyes are closed, and you can see her eyes, like when she's sleeping, going back and forth.
They're both having REM. And I just was like, in the miniseries, I'm sure that there will be like lots of wind, sand blowing around. The stills are trying to hold each other up and keep them from blowing away, and the sea is roiling. I think there may have been some little bit of roiling sea.
Yeah.
But
the obelisk will be
picture
moving
it.
around, right?
I think they were quite far away, most of them. I don't think they were all collected directly overhead like a box of crayons, or were they?
No, I don't know.
They would look like a box of crayons if they were all collected.
That'd
Well,
be very
and-
pretty.
And even if they, when they activate an obelisk, like what does that do? Does it start beeping? Does it start lighting up? Or is it just like a big heavy stone?
Well, I think sometimes they're kind of see-through, and then when you activate them, they go not see-through.
Oh, that's true. I think they become more corporeal when they're
Yeah,
doing things.
that's how I thought.
The rockimals.
Because sometimes they sort of blip out of view.
I guess in the miniseries we could see the origins, or we could see them seeing the magic, because that's like silvery stuff, right?
Yeah, that's true. But
But
I
then-
was trying to think, like, what does Tonki see right now? Does she just see two people standing around with their arms in the air like Moses, just sort of like flexing?
And then there's that lorist there who's trying to witness everything, but what is she putting in her
Look at
story?
you,
What's going in her story?
You'd be like, so they looked at each other, super tough. Essen said, "You turn around and look at me." And Nassin was like, "No, bitch." And then Essen smiled and then fell down and turned into stone.
Yeah. It's probably deathly quiet.
Yeah, it seems like it was probably really quiet. Like if you were not an origin, you were just like, so has it started? Has the showdown for the fate of the Earth started,
We're
or
all just sitting around like they're in Letterkenny at the produce stand.
is this the opener?
I bet they in the TV show they will go into like kind of like when they go into the Matrix and like they see like they're gonna get really small and like they're gonna go into like vessels in the rock. Maybe I don't know. There's just probably some artistic way to represent it. Maybe I don't know.
Well, hopefully we find out, because I actually do think this would make a pretty good miniseries.
Oh, absolutely. I think this could be like a 10-episoder.
I just Googled it. I didn't see anything.
Oh,
Well, studios can't do stuff too much right now, so.
plus, why would they do this when they can make another Spider-Man? People love Spider-Man.
Or like they love Spider-Man, but they don't, which is why we get a different Spider-Man like every 4 to 6 years.
Yeah, it's like Star
Try
Wars fans hate
again.
it.
Oh wait, apparently TNT was developing it as a series in 2017, but I don't know what happened to that.
That was before it was
I
even
think
finished.
sometimes things get optioned and then they sit for a while before they actually happen. But I think this would make a good show. I would definitely like to watch it.
There's actually an official term, and you can look it up on Wikipedia for when things go missing or just languish. It's called development hell, and there's its own Wikipedia entry about development hell because it happens so often in the entertainment industry. But yeah, that is all that I have for this book.
All right. Good job.
I think we all liked it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I did.
It's good stuff.
I was relieved that it was over for the
Yes.
reasons I said,
Yeah.
but I think it was more like fatigue of reading all this so quickly.
Yeah, for sure.
It gave me a lot, obviously. It gave us all a lot to think about.
Yeah.
So I like that. Whereas I have concurrently read Bridgerton, and that's like reading a children's book with some sex in it. So and I'm not shitting on that book. It was almost like a relief to sit down and read a book that was nothing more than what was on the page for a little while.
I think it'll be interesting to see how this trilogy affects science fiction for the next 20 years. So,
Yeah.
So if to our listeners in 20 years, just wait.
We were here
We'll
when it
still be
started.
here.
Yeah. Do you want to announce the next 3 we're reading in a row?
Sure. Our next upcoming reads are we're going to read Dragonflight by Anne McCaffrey for our March episode. And Dragonflight is a fix-up of 2 novellas. First one is called Where Search, I guess. It's spelled W-E-Y-R, is the first novella. And that was the 1968 winner of the Hugo Award for the best novella. And then the second part of the book is Dragon Rider, which was the 1969 Nebula winner for best novella. So that's a fix-up. And we are reading that because it is March and St. Patrick's Day. And Anne McCaffrey is American Irish or Irish American. I forget which.
Also, because it will be 1 year of quarantine and I'm going to fly on a dragon out of my house and leave forever.
Yeah. Our April episode will be Starship Troopers by Robert Heinlein, winner of the Hugo for Best Novel in 1960. And our May episode will be A Memory Called Empire by Arkady Martine. Do we think I'm saying that mostly correctly? Winner of the Hugo for Best Novel in 2020.
Woo.
So that's our lineup.
Looking forward to it.
Hooray!
All right. Anything else?
That'll do
I
it.
like you guys.
Mm-hmm.
I like you too. Let's do this indoors again sometime.
One day, maybe next year.
Or indoors together. Not because I am indoors right
I
now.
am technically inside. Yeah.
Pretty much always inside.
Cool.
All right. Bye.
Okay, bye.
Oh, I know about the hobbits. I know about the hobbits. Ugh.